and welcome to Nelda Live. My guest today is Austin Kleon. Austin, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
It is so good to have you. I just want to jump right in. We're going to talk about your book. I'm going to see if I'm holding it in the right place in the camera. Keep going. 10 Ways to Stay Creative in Good Times and Bad. You said that life is short, art is long. Can you tell us about the journey of writing this book? Because you said it was something you wrote because you needed to read it.
Well, it's strange because when I pick it up now, I'm like, I did write this before the pandemic. I know I did. So
So true.
It really started for me about 3 years ago. There were two things going on in my life. One, the kind of climate of the country changed. It felt like every day I'd wake up and the social media had kind of gotten dumber and meaner overnight, so I was very distracted, like a lot of my artistic friends, because when you're an artist, you tend to be sensitive, right? You take things in a lot, and so I was very distracted by the kind of climate of the country and what was going on. And then the second thing that happened was I'd pretty much been, I'd been writing books and publishing for about 10 years, and I just didn't know if I could do it anymore. I just every creative person struggles with that. Can I do it again? And so I was kind of exploring those two things that were happening at the same time, and it occurred to me that question, how do you keep going, that's true whether you're starting out or starting over or at the end of your journey, really. So I wanted to explore that question, and this was really a book I wrote for myself. It was the first one that I'd done that with, because my other books had been written for either me in the past or for other people. But this was one that I really felt like I needed to read.
Well, it's an amazing book. You say in here that you feel less like Luke Skywalker and more like Phil Connor from the movie The Groundhog Day. So can you tell the audience what you mean by that? I don't know if we need to tell them about Groundhog. Surely everyone's seen that movie.
Well, no spoilers, I suppose, but so if you haven't seen it, it's 25 years old now. So it's sort of this modern parable. So Groundhog Day is the story of Bill Murray plays a weatherman who wakes up on the same day, Groundhog Day, in a small town in Pennsylvania. And he has to figure out how he's going to live his life, repeating this day over and over. I think a lot of people sort of think of, I feel like a lot of creative people, they think, oh, what's it like to be creative? It's like Don Draper, the great genius, man. He just goes on a journey and meditates for a little bit, and that big idea pops up, the light bulb. And for me, Groundhog Day really encapsulates exactly how I feel as a creative person, because I literally come in here to my studio and I look at a blank page and I think to myself, didn't I just do this yesterday? I swear I just did this yesterday. I had a decent idea yesterday. Am I going to be able to do it again? And that happens over and over in creative careers, because no matter what point you are at in your career, that question, what's next? What are you going to do next? A creative person is someone who has to answer that. And it's not just creative people, right? It's like entrepreneurs and business people and people of all stripes. That question, what's next, hovers over you.
Oh yeah.
No matter what you're doing. And so for me, what helps me is to think of myself as Phil Connors. I have a routine. I'm faced with the same problems every day, and I have routine and structures and ways of getting through it, and ways of kind of perking my life up, so to speak, to get those ideas.
Recently I interviewed filmmaker David Lynch, and he follows the idea of living the art life, of aligning one's life to create and produce art in whatever medium, you choose. I'm assuming you can relate to that.
Sure. I mean, Lynch is a really interesting character to me. I mean, he always has been. The thing that I love about, I don't want to just make this about David's work, but I've always loved that image of him and the Big Boy. Did he talk about Big Boy at all? He probably doesn't go anymore.
Yeah, he didn't go to Big Boy. No,
but there's a great, when he was doing Twin Peaks and some of those shows, he talked about going to the Big Boy restaurant every afternoon. and having like a milkshake and a cup of coffee. And that's where he would get his ideas. And, the caffeine abuse set to the side. I think there's something about going to the same place every day and seeing what happens. That to me has been the most powerful idea, is that if you make a space in your life and you go a time and a space and you go there every day and you sort of sit there and you wait and you work, things happen. It's that idea of making time and space and bringing your materials there and seeing what happens.
Right. I think today he does quinoa.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
He's progressed.
Yes. You moved to LA and pretty soon you're eating quinoa.
That's right. So can you, because I know we're talking about his routine, very focused, and he did believe that routine, he does believe still that routine keeps him focused on everything. Can you walk us through, I know routine's important to you, so can you walk us through your life, a day?
Well, life is weird right now, during, to say the least. But luckily, I sort of had a routine. My boys really only went to school for about a year. They're 5 and 7, so so we had them at home for like half a decade, and I had this routine worked out with my wife where we kind of, I worked in the morning and she took over, and then we kind of switched up and stuff. But now, of course, we're back to those preschool days where they're at home all day. But for me personally, I'm a morning person. So I have to protect my mornings at all costs. So the most important thing for me in the morning is to not look at my phone and not know what's going on in the world. I can't know what's going on in the world. I get up, I make her breakfast, flip the TV on for the kids, and eat breakfast. We go for a walk every day, which I think is another like super important thing for me, is to get outside, see the world with your own senses. And we go for a little walk around our neighborhood every day for about an hour. We push the kids in the stroller still. They're getting too big, but it's the mental health thing. And then I come back here to the office, and then I work until lunch. And that's the really rich, that's just the really rich, raw creative time. And by lunchtime, depending on how much work I get done, that's when I let the world in, check email and that kind of thing. I've always loved, John Waters says he makes stuff up in the morning and he sells it in the afternoon. And so that's what I love, is to kind of like do the really raw creative work in the morning and then have lunch. And then the afternoons for administrative stuff, or it's for fun stuff like this, like Zoom calls and things like that. And that's pretty much it. I get in the pool with the kids at a certain point, and then I come back. So after lunch, I give my wife a couple hours off. I say, get out of here. I take the kids, we hop in the pool, and then I come back and do that admin work I talked about. And then I knock off at 5:00 like a banker. I'm done for the day. And so the rest of the day is just having dinner, hanging out with the kids, watching TV, drinking a whiskey.
There we go.
Reading, So that's pretty much every day. And that was every day before the pandemic. So I feel lucky in a lot of ways in that my life hasn't been impacted in quite the way that other people have.
Oh, yeah.
Because, my job is to sit around in my office trying to make stuff up. You don't necessarily have to go anywhere for that.
Oh, and hopefully you have, more readers now too, which is good as well for an author. But I like your slogan, keep your tools tidy and your materials messy. So what do you mean by that? So
I think, so I'm really inspired by the chef's idea. I'm a Texan, so we're allowed to mispronounce things, but the mise en place, the idea of having all your tools in the right spot, like chefs talk about that a lot. Anthony Bourdain writes about that in Kitchen Confidential. The idea that your workspace sort of becomes this extension of your body, kind of. So I like having all my tools in one space, but my materials I keep messy. So that's like scraps of paper and debris and books and just the clutter of life I let accumulate around me. And the reason I do that is because all these interesting combinations happen. Like even on a bookshelf, two books will be next to each other that you don't necessarily, wouldn't necessarily think of, and it gives you an idea. Or you see two scraps from the newspaper laying on the floor, and it gives you an idea. So I'm very much about having structure and order when it comes to the tools, and then chaos with the materials, and letting the materials kind of tell me what they want to be, so to speak. So this balance, I feel like, between order and chaos is something that all artists are try to attempt. And I feel like in the past couple of years, there's been this real emphasis on tidiness. And I find this to be very constrictive and not at all helpful for me personally, because there's something about finding things in the mess that is really helpful. I make these trash collages that are on my Instagram, if you look, and it's just junk that's been on my desk from other projects. And I create these collages, and half the time the trash collage is more interesting than the thing I was working on. So, as a creative person, I'm fascinated by this. I'm always interested in deleted scenes in movies, and this idea of like taking the debris from one project and turning it into another project. I'm a recycler. Like I like taking junk from one place and putting it in another place.
Yeah, it's interesting. I do encaustic art. And so in my studio, all I have to go do is plug in the wax. And I have two different places where I plug in wax. And I'm immediately, my mind starts being stimulated because of the smell.
Yes.
There's an odor to beeswax and the tree resin. Yeah. And so it just ignites, right? But you're talking about paper. I have papers from Texas Art Supply in Houston. I haven't found another source for them like these, but I collected lots and lots of handmade papers. And so they fascinate me. I keep every scrap of them because I use them. Yeah, the texture and the colors, and just the fact that someone made it in a way too. It has I don't know. It's beautiful.
I'm 100% with you. And even paper has a smell,
Yeah.
And I think that, when I was younger and I was working, I think this is really what I was missing, because, I was being a writer, clackety, clackety, clack on the keyboard, and there's no sensory, it's such a lack of sensory input. Even when there's a kind of feedback to writing by hand even. But that said, it's such a back and forth with me, because a lot of times I'll start analog. I'll start with sort of analog tools, like I'll be writing by hand, and then I'll switch over to digital when I sort of have the idea and I just need to like kind of pound it out. And my friend Clive Thompson has actually did some research where he found papers where that was exactly what these scientists had figured out, which is like, if you want to generate ideas, a lot of times pencil and paper leads to better things. But if you want to communicate ideas, if you want to take your ideas and put them into the world, then that's when you type. I find it really interesting, this idea that might be, I'm very into appropriate technologies. Like, I'm not a Luddite, and I'm not a kind of proto-techno person. I'm very much about what is the appropriate technology for the job. And I think that every creative person has to figure this out. But the tools you use are technology, right? They're just a certain type of technology. And that's what I'm always trying to get to people. I'm always trying to like tell people, like, a pencil is a technology. Like, this is a piece of technology. And if you start thinking that way, if you start thinking about pencil and paper as a technology, and then like a laptop as a piece of technology, that really, I think it helps, because then you can pick what's the appropriate technology, and then you don't have to feel like an old, you don't have to feel out of touch or whatever.
It's interesting that you say that, because encaustic is one of the oldest known forms of art, because it's in the sarcophagus of Egypt, and it's how they, technology-wise, if you will, it's how they preserved who that person was that was in that casket, right? And beeswax doesn't die. I mean, it's still there, still preserved. Fascinating.
Whereas a hard drive will deteriorate in 20 years, right?
Good point.
So this idea about what lasts, I think it's very strange in the culture now, because you'll have all these art preservation projects where it's like, well, we're going to digitize this art and make sure to preserve it and stuff. And it's like, well, actually this art's been around for 500 years.
It's doing all right.
Like, actually, who's going to keep the servers alive and all this stuff for 500 years? So
That's such a good point.
It's weird. But to me, like, my whole career has been on the edge of doing this analog work, but also having this digital platform, and it's just all a big stew, really.
Yeah.
But appropriate technology is the thing.
Oh yeah.
So interesting.
Oh yeah. I mean, I follow you on Instagram, so Instagram is an interesting technology. It's interesting to what you can get across to the people that are, interested in what you're doing, and give them a little snapshot into your day and that kind of thing. So that's always very, very interesting. I want to go back to your family if I can, because creative people need huge amounts of time. So having the family around, how do you see that, how it affects your work?
This is a great question. It has been really surprising to me. Because particularly for men, I think, there's that horrible Cyril Connolly line where he says the enemy of creativity is the pram in the hall, the stroller. So, if you're a man in particular, you've got this whole kind of macho, anti-domestic history to contend with. What's interesting to me is that there's this whole beautiful literature of women artists who are mothers, who write about art in a way that has been way more, I'm getting off topic, but I found that reading mothers and their experience of making art and being a parent to be way more illuminating than reading about dads. I mean, Michael Chabon has a couple of neat collections, but he's got this great line where he's like, the bar is so historically low for fathers that's very easy to leap over it.
Wow. Okay.
But I've always been more interested in like people like Sally Mann, who she actually uses her kids in her art, and there's a playwright named Sarah Rule who wrote this wonderful book about theater and motherhood. But anyway, so I come at it from I wanted my kids to, there's this idea that you need to keep family separate and the work separate. And I went in it in this other way, in that I wanted there to be like kind of this total stew of what was going on in the house. So I wanted to bring my boys in the studio as soon as I could, because I also had this idea that, and I think this is a very like fatherly thing. Like, I think a lot of dads are like, I'm going to teach him how to ride a bike, and I'm going to teach him how to hit a baseball, and I'm going to teach him this and that and this. And I kind of came at it from the other way. I thought, I'm going to do the things I love in front of them. And then I figure they'll either want to do those things too, or they'll teach me what it is that they actually want to do. And that has been the case. They have taught me way more than I could ever have possibly taught them. And I think what they've taught me about art in particular, I don't think you can teach it. I think you can set the stage for it, which is something that John Baldessari said. I think that you can provide materials and influence, and they can watch you, but at the end of the day, I think you make a space for learning to happen. And so that has been, so in the course of making space for my kids to do their own art and to do their own learning, they've taught me how to give myself my own space. And I think it's been really liberating being a parent, because it's given me this second chance to really ask myself what I'm truly interested in, what my natural talents actually are, and to put all my energy into that, into who, I really feel like I am, because that's what I'm trying to help the kids do. And so I feel a lot less uptight now. Now that might just be changing diapers and just, the humility that comes from a parent.
Right.
From being pooped on and literally, and, but for me, it's just been completely liberating. And it's also, I think that 4-year-olds are the perfect artists. I think that 4-year-olds have no filter. They don't worry
Right.
about making art. They don't worry about what's good. They just make stuff. And they also don't have names for things yet. So their sensory experience of the world is completely hallucinogenic and almost and kaleidoscopic.
You know,
They're naturally curious.
one of the interesting things is I used to, I always call my life as a portfolio. I taught elementary art from kindergarten through 5th grade for 8 years. Absolutely adored it, loved it, loved it, loved it. And I used to always say, people would say, where do you see the breaks in kids' creativity? And I always said, after second grade. After second grade, they compare everything to each other, and there's this creativity force that's there before, but from second grade back, there's this creative force, and so they're fascinating. Kids are fascinating, and that they don't really have that much of a comparison. Third grade, I used to start seeing it, and it used to just break my heart,
I know.
Uh,
So I have a
and
7-year-old. So he would have been second grade this year.
yeah,
And I can see it already. I can see it, and I'm like, well, maybe this year will be a gift in a way.
yeah,
Maybe
yeah.
we'll put this off one more year. This
Yeah,
great
we are
whatever
going to
happens.
too. Yeah, I have 11 and 12. I mean, our team and I, those of us who are parents, we always talk about, I'm doing this second time around. So I have adult kids and then I have another set. But the thing is that I look at it very differently. I home educated my first two. So
Oh,
yeah, so I was kind of, we were doing that back then, back whenever I wore, denim jumpers or something. But anyway, but the thing is that, I did it for the same reasons that a lot of what you're talking about, because I just wanted a more natural flow to life, and I wanted them to know what I did and to see those things. And so that is so cool. They also, don't you think they kind of having your kids around brings that playfulness that adults forget?
absolutely. Just that. I mean, the play is so. I mean, that's what artists do. I mean, it's the work of the child and it's the work of the artist is to play. And I also like having a gang. I've always wanted like studio mates. Like I like to have people around. I mean, I'm fairly extroverted, but I do like to have other bodies in my space kind of, and to get like use their energy. And my kids are at the age actually where I will steal ideas from them. They come up with like wonderful phrases. So Owen mispronounces coronavirus. Coronavirus. See, I say it. So Owen mispronounces coronavirus as chronovirus.
Chrono.
And he kept calling it coronavirus. And I thought, well, that's a much better name for it because it's a virus that destroys our sense of time. Chrono as in
There we go.
time. So I started making these I've been making these coronavirus collages out of watch faces from magazines. But that's just like, and then my other son, Jules, wants to be an author. And so he decided that he doesn't have to take a bath because he's an important author, and authors don't take baths. They sleep dirty. And I thought, sleep dirty? So I made a zine called Sleep Dirty.
Sleep
so I have
Dirty.
a zine series called Slurp. So like, it's not only about trying to like they are feeding me stuff all day. They're like little they're like little talent scouts or so. I don't know.
That's so great.
It's just a constant stew of stuff. But the home educating stuff is really interesting to me because I would say a huge influence on my own practice has been coming into contact with unschooling, the idea of unschooling. And reading the work of John Holt in particular. I was raised by public educators, and I was valedictorian of my high school. So I'm like a super overachieving school person. So but then when I got out of college, I realized the thing I wanted to do is very, you're not going to learn it in school. So like I had to really I did all my interesting work outside of school. Like I had to really kind of set a lot of my school aside. And so when I was, the propaganda when I was growing up is that homeschoolers are crazy, they're weirdos. And that was the propaganda I grew up with. Now, are some homeschoolers insane? Yes. Everyone's there's,
Yes,
a
you
lot
can
of
find
people are insane.
Yes.
But there's this unschooling in particular, this idea that children are natural learners, that they don't need to be, that they're kind of off to the races. And this idea that you can school at home. I think what it did for me, even though we send our kids to school now, or did, to me, it was more about, let's create an atmosphere at home in which learning is totally natural.
Absolutely.
So let's make the home like a studio.
Well, let's switch gears and talk about being the verb and not the noun.
Yes.
Walk us through that.
Lots of people want to be writers, right? I want to be a writer or a novelist. Not that many people want to sit down and write. I want to be an artist, but that whole sitting in my studio 8 hours a day, that seems a little rough, right? So, I mean, the way to become the noun is to do the verb. If you want to be a writer, you have to write. If you want to be a painter, you have to paint. You would think this is very basic, but it's not. It seems to be everyone's great stumbling block. So I always tell people, why don't you just forget that noun altogether? Don't worry about being an artist. Don't worry about being a writer. Just worry about writing. Worry about making art. Because the thing I found is that, when I started out, I wanted to be like a fiction writer. I wanted to be like a novelist. But I found out over time that's not my natural ability. I don't think in terms of character and plot. I think in terms of images and ideas. So I realized that if I had stuck with that vision, I have to be a novelist. I wouldn't be doing the kind of things I am doing right now. Or if I said, well, I'm just a writer, I wouldn't be doing the visual art that I was doing right now, right? So I feel like job titles, and in particular, and nouns can really restrict us in a lot of bad ways. I think they make you like really uptight. And so I think that if there is a noun that you're going for, you have to figure out how to turn it into a verb so you can get there.
Yeah.
So that is my own personal, that's what's always worked for me. I mean, for some people, it seems to be helpful to call themselves artists before they make art. Like I'm a writer. Here's my typewriter, here's my stuff. I'm like, I'm a writer. Here's my notebook. Here we go. But for me, it's always been, I've just been like, what is it that I really like to do? What are the verbs that I like to do? And there's a guy in town, a friend of mine named Stephen Tomlinson. And he gave this wonderful talk years ago that inspired me so greatly. He was like, look, if you're someone who likes to do a couple of things, if you have 3 passions, if you try to cut one of them out of your life, you will feel phantom limb pain. It will nag at you forever. So if you have 3 passions, say, you got to figure out a way to keep those passions in your life somehow, even if it's only like an hour a week, and you keep them in your life, and pretty soon after a while they talk to each other, and what comes forth might not be a career, but it'll be a life. And that has inspired me. I remember him being on stage and saying that, and I still to this day, it's like I think so many people feel phantom limb pain because they had that thing in their life, right? They had that thing that they just loved, that fed them. And they were like, oh, but I'm a mom now. I don't have time. I can't, no. Or, oh, I'm real busy at work. And that phantom limb pain, it stays there and you feel it all the time. And the way to not feel it is to bring the thing back, even for a little while.
Yeah.
And I just think it's really important.
It's funny. I don't like it when people are like around the room. So what do you do? What's your, who are you and what do you do? And because I do think life is a portfolio, that that, if I were to, when people ask me, what do you do? I'm like, well, I'm a Broadway producer. I didn't mean to be one.
Yeah.
I saw something was brought to me and I was like, oh, wow, that's got to get out there. So I became a producer. And so then same thing with the documentary films and things I'm involved with. I mean, someone brought something, was like, wow, that needs to be out there. Right. And so, but I'm a teacher and I'm a mom and, I oh my gosh, help other organizations start up, and I work with nonprofits, and I run a company, and right now I'm starting up a media company. And it's like, I don't know what my title is. I really don't. I really don't have one, And so when people ask me that question, I always stumble over it because, in fact, sometimes they'll say, "What do you do?" And I'll look at them and I go, "I don't know." Today.
I'm a mind reader. No,
I just use that one.
It's like, for me, yeah, it's really weird. And then I'm always, I tell people, I'm like, I'm shelved in the self-help section in a lot of bookstores. Wow. If you had told 19-year-old me that I'd be a self-help writer, I would have vomited, because like 19-year-old me would have been like, oh, but then because I stayed flexible over time, I found out, well, in publishing, there's this weird niche called a gift book. And it's a thing where you can make a very illustrated, like you can make illustrated books that are sold by the cash register. Like that's a thing. That's an industry thing. Yeah. And so I didn't know that existed until my book Steal Like an Artist came out. And when that book came out, I was like, oh, there's a whole genre of this. So the books after Steal Like an Artist have been me playing with this form, this weird role that I stepped into, right? Because that happens a lot where you're all of a sudden you're in this weird, you're like, wait, I do this now? But if you stay flexible and you're like, well, what are my big things I love to do? It's like, well, I love to write, I love to draw and make images, and I love to put those things together. And then you're like, well, where's the outlet that I can do that? And it just happened to be these weird little books. And so then the game becomes like, what can you do with this form that some people are like, ugh, that kind of they roll their eyes. How good can you make this? Right? Because it would be like, oh, I don't like romantic comedies or something. And you're like, oh, you don't like Bring Up Baby or Groundhog Day, or like there are these things that blend genre. So that's something I'm really interested in as an artist too. And I think particularly for younger artists, how the heck are they even going to know what the form's going to be right now? Because who like with music, for example, how are people going to take music in 10 years even? Who knows? I mean, 10 years ago, so it's like things are always changing. So I really think if you get back to that, what do you like to do? What are the verbs? And you stick with your verbs, and then you figure out a place where you can do those verbs to bring forth things.
You also said something about brand, not staying on brand.
Yes. So, we're encouraged now to be brands, like to the personal brand, Austin Kleon, but if I worked in advertising for a while, and brands have brand guidelines, and they're very strict. Like I used to get the brand guidelines as a copywriter, and I was like, well, you have to say this, and you have to use this point font with this color, and you can't go out of the, there were like these they weren't even constraints. They were like, they were, I mean, I guess they were constraints. There was room for creativity there, but it was very defined what this thing was that they were doing. And that to me is the opposite. There was a certainty that came with it. We are certain this is who we are and this is what we do. To me, that is the complete opposite feeling of everything decent that I've ever made. Because everything decent I've ever made as an artist has started from this place of, I have no idea what I'm doing. Just scribbling like one of my kids, right? I don't know what this is going to be. Oh, it's starting to look like a snowman. Like it's there. Art starts from a place of uncertainty. And I think that when you have a brand, you you start to harden and you start to solidify and you start to calcify. And Milton Glaser, the designer who just died recently, I mean, he had a good run. He was in his 90s, but it's still like a giant. He had this long career. And he put it this way. He said, and this is kind of controversial. He said, I hope I don't mess it up. He says, the path to personal growth is antithetical to professional success. So he's like, when you become a professional success, that requires you doing something that people grasp, like we get it. And then in order to keep having success or for people to buy things from you, it's like a lot of times in the creative field, give us more of that. Give us more of that thing that was a success, right? But as a creative person or in your personal life, you're trying to grow. You're trying to evolve into the next thing. This is the easiest way to look at this is in music, because there's always the album that breaks that the band loves. I always feel like the band Radiohead's a great example. They start with guitars and they do this music and they gain this audience, and then they do this really weird album. And then they do this super weird album with no guitars and freak everyone out, but they did have a kind of, there's a way of navigating that world where you're moving in between satisfying like the audience's expectations, but also where you want to take the audience. And so it's a really interesting dance. And I don't know that you can do it. I'm not sure the great artists did it with intention or not, but the great careers kind of have this flow to them where it's that dance, right? And between Lynch is a great example.
Oh yeah, don't get pigeonholed anywhere. Yeah, that's true. It really is true.
Like this dance of what you want to do and what people want from you, and so I think a lot of times in my personal practice that comes down to there's a difference between making and sharing. So I make lots of weird stuff that doesn't go into the books, for example, right? But that's what like a blog and Instagram is great for, right? Because I can make this weird stuff that people are like, what is this? Like more book stuff. But I still have an outlet for it, and so it's like you got to let you have to make the stuff that's going to come, but that doesn't mean you have to share it, right? Or you have to publish it. So that's it's like, well, where can I put this weird stuff? Well, that's blog material. Right, that's an Instagram post, whereas this is a book chapter over here.
Right. So let's move to someone else that it just so happens that you and I and my team are big fans of Joseph Campbell, and I just interviewed Bob Walter, who Bob was friends with Joseph. Did a lot of stuff in his life, a long time together as friends, and he still runs the foundation, Joseph Campbell Foundation. And so I interviewed him, and I loved seeing your Bliss Station chapter in your book. Yeah, because for people who aren't familiar, I'm just going to read this quote because it's so interesting that I saw it in your book. I was like, one of my favorite quotes from Joseph Campbell. So I'm going to read it. So Austin, here's what Joseph Campbell said. You must have a room or a certain hour or so a day where you don't know what is in the newspapers that morning. You don't know who your friends are. You don't know what you owe anybody. You don't know what anybody owes you. This is a place where you can simply experience and bring forth what you are and what you might be. This is the place of creative incubation. At first, you may find that nothing happens there. But if you have a sacred place and use it, something eventually will happen. You call it the place where you disconnect from the world and connect to yourself. So I see we're there right now, right? Are we not in your space?
We are. We're here.
So we're in your Bliss Station. What is so important to you about that separate space then?
Well, I think first of all, we carry these little black boxes around all day that keep you tethered, right? That you can be in touch all the time. But the thing about the phone is it takes away so many of the conditions that traditionally have led to art, like boredom, isolation.
Yes.
Uh, these states in which we're in touch with something other than what's in the news, like Campbell says. For me, it's about being able to hear myself, and because I don't know what I'm thinking unless it's coming through the pen half the time. I can't hear myself think half the time in the world unless I make a time to listen to it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I think this is I just think having a place where you can go and be uninterrupted and be in touch with your own feelings and your own thoughts, it's just disappearing from the culture right now.
Yeah.
One of the places I think people used to get it is on airplanes. I think actually some of the people I know who flew a lot were like, my friend Rob Walker the other day was saying, I miss airplane mode. I miss being in airplane mode. And I wrote about an artist that I love named Nina Kachadorian, who actually used long flights to make artwork. That was the time where she made many of her pieces for her series called Seat Assignment.
Wow.
And I love that title too, because seat assignment is what my old creative writing professor used to say. He said, "Apply butt to chair." That is the assignment. Sit in your chair long enough to make something. But the bliss station for me is I'm interested in how Campbell says you need a time or a place, because he says he's talking about time and space. So in some ways the bus can be a bliss station if you go there every day at the same, like your commute could be a bliss station, and I'm always interested in, if you're, say, a single mom who lives in a tiny apartment, I'm always interested in whether a bliss station could be more of a time rather than a space. So the bliss station might be if you can get up at 6 a.m. before your kids are up and you sit at the kitchen table turns into a bliss station. So I'm always interested in that, like, what are the conditions in which we can create a bliss station? When I was traveling more, it was like, well, earplugs and airplane mode.
Right.
That'll do. But I don't think the culture respects this much anymore. I don't think the dominant culture right now that we have any respect for the idea of a bliss station, because
absolutely.
we want people to be connected 24/7. And part of that is just the American, we want to sell you things. Nobody can sell you anything when you're at your bliss station because you're not taking anything in.
Yeah, so true. So in your bliss station there, Austin, I just got to, when I was talking to David Lynch, and I did some work with his foundation, and that's to help healthcare workers and essential workers have some meditation, teach them about meditation so that they can, some de-stress a little bit there. But do you practice? I'm just curious. Do you practice any kind of meditation, or is your bliss station your meditation? Or
I did for a while. I practiced when my first kid was really little, and then I sort of realized that art making has the kind of same effects that I get from meditation. So when I write my journal longhand, I'm almost in a kind of trance-like state. I have thought about going back to meditation, but I'm just such a fidgety, which is even more reason for me to go back to it. But there's something for me about there's collage does that too. I get in these weird trance states when I'm making my collages where I'm not doing any kind of rational thinking whatsoever. It's just this image is appearing in front of me out of these scraps. But I do get in this kind of disconnected, kind of trance-like state, and that's a big part of what happens in the bliss station. But I would also like to say that I'm interrupted constantly. I mean, I've really changed my idea about art and interruption. Part of that's come from reading Wendell Berry, the poet and farmer and essayist. He talks about art and interruption, I used to think that like art only came out of complete, never being interrupted. Like everything is about the art, but Wendell Berry talks about how interruption provides meaning for the work. That actually, when you're being interrupted, the interruption is part of life, and that just adds like sort of more meaning to the work. And I think about that with my kids a lot. Like when they interrupt me, at first you have that, like I was, but then you're like, I'm going to turn and I'm going to give you attention and I'm going to go right back to it, even though it's hard.
Yeah.
But I'm interested in that as a parent because I don't think there's any other, the world will always interrupt you. Do you take the interruption as a curse or do you think of it as something that just provides meaning to when you're actually doing the work? I don't know. It might be a little bit too wishful thinking, but I do think there's something to it. There's something to the interruptions in the same way when you break your routine to do something fun. It's like playing hooky, right? Like playing hooky is not very fun if you never go to school, right? I mean, if you never go to school, playing hooky doesn't have the thrill. Whereas if you're in school all the time, like playing hooky every once in a while feels really good.
Oh yeah.
That's sort of like the interruption thing. I don't know. And there's something there to it, but I don't know.
So when you're talking about leaving the world behind, if you will, when you're in that area, you also talk about FOMO and JOMO. Am I right?
Right.
I want to make sure I'm saying that correctly.
So there's FOMO, FOMO, that's the fear of missing out. And then there's JOMO, which is the joy of missing out. That is having the maturity to know I'm going to miss so many things in life. I'm going to miss TV shows that people love. I'm going to miss books. I'm going to miss parties. I'm going to miss great restaurants that just opened. I'm going to miss these things, and that's okay because I have this other thing that I'm doing. So switching from a FOMO mindset to a JOMO mindset has been really important. That's what you have to do. That's another parenting thing, right? To say,
yes,
I'm going to miss out on so much, but then there's so much happening here too, right? And because I do think the one thing I will say about a life dedicated to creative work is it does require you to choose. You have to choose things. We're always choosing things whether we know it or not. I mean, to get enough time, for example, to write your novel, you're not going to be able to watch Netflix the way other people do. Like you just have to make choices, and that's a big part of the work. Choosing what to leave out of your life, choosing what holes you're going to have and what spaces, that makes the space for the other stuff, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm going to say one more Joseph Campbell quote because I love this one. Okay, if you follow your bliss, you put yourself on a kind of track that has been there all the while, waiting for you. And the life that you ought to be living is the one you are living. Wherever you are, if you are following your bliss, you are enjoying that refreshment, that life within you all the time.
I can dig it.
Would you say you're following your bliss?
I hope so. Of course, I love the New Yorker cartoon where the guy's holding a sign that says "Followed my bliss," and he's on the side of the street. He's got a cardboard sign, "Followed my bliss." But I love thinking. The best thing that I so far in my career, the thing that's felt the best had like I'm meant to do this. Like, I am meant to do this. Like, when I make one of my books, I have a kind of feeling of like, I'm meant to do this. I can do, not only can I do this, this is what I'm supposed to do. And when you find that, I don't think every person finds that, but when you find that, you really need to honor it, and pay attention to it. And that, I think that's bliss,
Yeah.
Feeling like you're firing on all cylinders. That's the other thing I love about making art is that idea that the head, the heart, and the hands are aligned. That it's all, that you're a whole person again because I think so much of the work we do is fragmented. We don't feel like we're in control of the whole thing. We feel like a cog, that kind of thing. That is the one thing I love about making art, is that you feel like you're in control. You're doing it. You're everything's firing. You're not.
Oh, yeah.
There's not a piece of yourself that you're not using.
So you're about to make my wall, because I was writing this earlier. It's a quote from a guy named Austin Kleon.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh. Yeah. 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 We interviewed your friends. Certainty in art and life is not only completely overrated, it's actually a roadblock to discovery. So, Austin, it's just so great to have you. I hope that you keep on discovering. I hope that you continue to follow your bliss. And I just want you to know it's such a great day. So great to have you here.
You.
Thank
this
you
is really
so
fun for me.
much. Oh yeah.
It's been a gift to my day.
Yeah. Anything coming up?
I'm working on a book about what my kids taught me about art. So
here we go.
Trying. And I feel like these last 3 books really talk to each other. So it's that thing of like, well, what can we do that's new? Like what can we do that brings the reader? Because you said earlier, it's a thing to have readers is a beautiful, wonderful thing. And I'm like, I think I want to do something that speaks to them and helps them, but also takes them on a ride that I want to give them.
Oh yeah, I can't wait for that. I'm right down the road from you. I might just come by and see it.
Excited.
So I'm inviting myself.
We'll see what happens. Yeah.
So where can people follow you?
So the easiest thing is just go to austinkleon.com, and I'm Austin Kleon on Instagram and Twitter and all those places. But my absolute favorite thing that I do online is I do a weekly newsletter. And it's a list of 10 things that I think are worth sharing. And it's just art, music, books, stuff I've made. And it goes out every week. It's free, and I just love it. It's just my favorite thing that I do. I've been doing it for so long now, and it's my way of it's the best way to keep in touch with me.
Oh, cool. I'm going to have to get on that then. All right. Okay. Well, hey, man, keep planting that garden.
Thank you. I will.
All right. Thank you so much, Austin.